I don't normally make political content on this channel. Honestly, politics to me feels like a game of power where Republicans and Democrats alike prioritize their social war bullshit over the actual needs of the American people. The constant fear-mongering from both sides turns me off. It feels needlessly divisive, and it keeps me from aligning with either party entirely. But with Election Day fast approaching, and this election potentially being one of the most pivotal in American history, I feel it's necessary for me to step out of my comfort zone to talk about what I see as a serious problem. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Donald Trump is Hitler too, or that Kamala Harris is some sort of savior for America, but what I want to talk about is the selective outrage of MAGA Republicans. Donald Trump is a man who's faced countless serious allegations, not just rumors, but documented legal cases. In 2023, Trump was found liable for sexually abusing and defaming E. Jean Carroll. In July of that year, Judge Lewis Kaplan stated that the jury had found that Trump had raped Carroll, according to the common definition of the word. A court of law determined that this wasn't just a baseless accusation, it happened. You'd think that something as significant as rape would cause at least some moral hesitation, right? Apparently not. I've spoken to people who've shrugged this off, literally saying, that's his personal life. And let us not forget that this is not the only example of Trump's disturbing behavior towards women. In 2005, Donald Trump openly bragged on the Howard Stern show that while he owned Miss USA, he would walk into women's changing rooms, stating that he could get away with it because he owns the pageant.
I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting. I want to make sure that
You're like
everything
a
is
doctor.
good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
That means that Trump himself admitted to violating the privacy of women and girls, some of whom were as young as 16. And of course, we all know about his infamous "grab him by the pussy" quote. And yet somehow, this is all shrugged off by his supporters. So wait, protecting women's spaces is supposed to be a core issue for Republicans, seeing as they argue against transgender people in women's bathrooms and sports, but somehow, Trump violating not only women's spaces, but even a woman's body isn't a big deal. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Beyond his treatment of women, Trump's interference in elections is another massive red flag that gets downplayed. It's been well documented that Trump and his campaign were willing to accept help from foreign powers like Russia to sway the 2016 election. Whether you agree with the details of the Mueller investigation or not, it's undeniable that Trump welcomed outside influence undermining the democratic process. But the interference didn't stop there. Trump was also involved in the hush money payments made to adult film star Stormy Daniels. In this case, he paid off Daniels to keep an affair a secret during the 2016 campaign, with the intention of protecting his chances of winning. This act of silencing someone to avoid damaging his campaign is just another form of election interference. But instead of acknowledging this, Republicans call it a nothing burger. They claim it's just about a consensual affair and doesn't affect his ability to lead. His supporters defend him by saying that every politician plays dirty, but these same people are quick to brand any slip-up or gaffe by a Democrat as a sign of total corruption. And let's not forget the January 6th insurrection. Trump encouraged an attack on our democracy to overturn a fair election, and even now, after countless Republicans, including the very Supreme Court justices Trump himself appointed, have said otherwise, Trump continues to push the narrative that the election was stolen from him, despite having zero evidence to back this up after 4 years. And Trump didn't just encourage the rioters, he allowed the violence to escalate. There's direct evidence that he knew that the mob was calling for his own Vice President, Mike Pence, to be hanged for not overturning the 2020 election results, and he did nothing to stop it. He only told the rioters to go home hours after the attack began, and multiple police officers defending our capital had already been injured. One such officer, Brian Sicknick, was even attacked with a chemical spray and unfortunately lost his life the very next day. And yet, we still see MAGA Republicans downplaying January 6th, as if it were just a rowdy protest rather than a violent attempt to overturn a democratic election. Furthermore, many high-ranking officials who worked under Trump, people like his former Secretary of Defense James Mattis, his Attorney General Bill Barr, and even his former Chief of Staff John Kelly and his former Vice President Mike Pence, have all come out and said that Trump is dangerous. These are Republicans who worked inside his administration, and they've publicly warned that he's unfit to lead. But instead of paying attention to these voices, MAGA Republicans will brush them off as rhinos, or Republicans in name only, or claim that they're part of the deep state. Even Donald Trump's current running mate, J.D. Vance, has made claims that Trump is dangerous, stating at one time that Trump makes people he cares about afraid. Sure, Vance backtracks on those claims now, but let me ask you this. Do you really believe that he really changed his views? Or is he only sucking up now because Trump offered him a promotion? Yet these same people who will endlessly defend Trump to the ends of the earth, no matter what he does, will then go around and tear Kamala Harris down when it comes to complaints that, quite frankly, are almost laughable. I've seen people tear her apart in conservative circles for laughing weirdly, or for speaking in a black accent, this despite the fact that she is black. It's this hyper-focus on petty, inconsequential things, while excusing or ignoring genuine issues that's so frustrating to me. Harris gets accused of not talking about her policies and always talking about her childhood, but when you listen to her speeches, she's constantly addressing policy issues like healthcare, women's rights to body autonomy, criminal justice reform, climate change, and more. And in regards to her talking about her personal life, politicians, including Trump by the way, will often use personal stories to explain their motivations, and Harris is no different from any others in that regard. The problem here is that many Republicans would rather obsess over her laugh, or whether or not she's actually black, than have a serious discussion about her policies, probably because it's easier for them to criticize superficial traits than to engage with real ideas. The same selective outrage can be seen in how they react to other Democrats. Minnesota's governor and Harris's running mate Tim Walz, for instance, gets crucified for the way he handled COVID restrictions, even though those policies were in line with public health guidelines at the time. He gets mocked for misspeaking during the debate with J.D. Vance, when he accidentally states that he made friends with school shooters, when in actuality he clearly meant the families of school shooting victims. MAGA Republicans paint him as an authoritarian dictator and as a crazed old man, but then they give a complete pass to the fact that Trump openly called for his vice president to overturn the 2020 election, and incited a violent mob to storm the Capitol. The disproportionate focus on minor flaws or unpopular decisions by Democrats, while Trump gets a free pass for behavior that is actually dangerous, is astounding. This pattern is even clearer when it comes to culture wars around transgender rights. MAGA Republicans claim they want to protect women's spaces, such as bathrooms, changing rooms, and sports teams, from transgender individuals. They'll cite safety concerns or fairness in competition. But where's the same energy when it comes to Trump's actual abuse of women, his dismissiveness towards the Me Too movement, or his history of invading women's dressing rooms at Miss USA pageants? It's not about protecting women, it's about pushing a specific narrative that aligns with their cultural agenda. In the end, this selective outrage is not about principle, it's about loyalty to a political brand. Trump's loyalists will defend anything he does, no matter how egregious, because they see him as a champion of their cause. And at the same time, they'll magnify the smallest flaws of Democrats to create a caricature that suits their agenda. This isn't just hypocrisy, it's a deliberate strategy to avoid accountability while keeping the focus on the opposition's perceived shortcomings. As voters, we have to recognize this pattern of selective outrage for what it is, a distraction. A way to keep us fighting over minor issues while the real problems, like threats to democracy, abuses of power, and corruption, get swept under the rug. So no, I'm not here to tell you that Harris is perfect, or that Trump is the worst human being to ever live. But we have to stop pretending that minor flaws or superficial traits are on the same level, or somehow worse, than real, dangerous actions. We owe it to ourselves to hold everyone accountable, not just the people we already disagree with. To close, I want to be clear. In the 2024 election, Kamala Harris is the only good option for president. The alternative isn't just some other politician with a different viewpoint. It's someone who has not only repeatedly shown disregard for the law, disregard for the democratic process, and disregard for the checks and balances in our government, but someone who actively goes against the very principles that Republicans claim they stand for. Trump is a criminal who has proven himself to be a threat to our democracy, someone who prioritizes his own power over the welfare of the American people. For anyone who cares about fairness, justice, and protecting the democratic values this country was built on, the choice is clear. Vote for Harris and save America.